before we get started, it's been brought to my attention that on item number 2, Markway Design Amendment, that it's tied to a CDBG contract that is caught up in some negotiations, so it's not ready for us to discuss, so it's been asked that we remove it from the agenda, so I make a motion to amend the agenda and remove item number 2.
I support that recommendation.
Well, okay, thank you very much, Lawrence. Okay, item number 1, Null Avenue construction change order approval. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Susie. I'll go ahead and take this one. Actually, this agenda item is going to be a tag team effort with John Bellinger and I. John Bellinger will be answering any questions that you may have or members of the committee have about the actual improvements that are being proposed or part of this change order. I'll take care of the contractual and budgetary issues. As a reminder, we have the current approved construction contract for the Null Avenue Rehabilitation Project is $3,444,820.55. Per City Council policy, the City Administrator has the authority to approve change orders administratively up to a certain amount, and that amount is 2.5% of the total project contract, or $20,000, whichever is more. This change order that's being proposed takes 2 items and moves them to a change order, to change order number 1 for this project. But given that it's at the amount of $73,000, that is 2.1% approximately of the approved contract. But given that it does exceed the $20,000 amount, it does require City Council action at this time. Also, as a reminder, the current contract that we have with Miles has what's called a force account line item. That force account is essentially a contingency account of $100,000. That's about 3% of the total project contract. And it is for items such as this, items that were unanticipated at the start of the project. We could keep this particular items as a force account or contingency billings, essentially charged to that account. But it would get us very close to depleting that force account at this time. The impact of that would be that sometime prior to project completion, we do get to the maximum amount. We would have to come back before the City Council at that time and seek council approval, consideration, and approval of a change order, which could delay the project. And that's one thing that we're not interested in seeing. I'm sure the council's not interested in seeing that as well. A couple of good news. We are up to about we're over 65% completion on the Null Avenue project. Our engineers assure us that the major items that can cause this type of additional expenses are behind us at this point. So we do not expect at this time to have any significant additional expenses. If we do move these items from the force account or contingency to a change order, and we get to the end of the project and we haven't depleted or exhausted that force account, we'll do another change order and basically credit ourselves back for the expenses that were not incurred at that time. So with that, we do have a recommendation of approval of this change order number 1 in the amount of $73,000, which would increase the total construction contract to $3,517,820.55. And again, if you have any questions about the actual work that's been performed or will be performed with this change order, John Bellinger is also here to help answer any questions.
Yeah, I think if John could give us a summary as to what all this is entailing, that'd be good.
The areas
John,
that they have found, where the subgrade's unsuitable, basically where you have a lot of organic material, tree roots, things of that nature, that will not hold up to that street. They're removing the unsuitable material and replacing that with rock to stabilize the base so the streets go down.
Is that primarily where are those locations at?
Mostly,
Because I know there's a lot of trees along there between Markway and Shawnee Mission Parkway, or at least there were.
mainly on just north of Shawnee Mission Parkway. Some areas in there where the concrete was before. There's a lot of organic material under there. And then they found quite a bit just south of 63rd Street along the front of this church here, where a lot of that had to come out. Those are the 2 main areas so far. There's also another area where this ramp comes off of Shawnee Mission Parkway to go northbound Knoll.
Okay.
Okay, other comments from the committee for either John or Martin? Any other comments? Do I have approval to take this to the council? Change order number one,
I
$73,000.
would so recommend.
Connie? Will? Consent
No.
agenda?
No.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3. Council policy regarding annual street maintenance program. Mr. Justin.
Okay, I hope you all had a chance to read this policy. What it is it's a council policy that guides staff direction and at what point council is involved in programming and selecting which streets are going to be part of the street maintenance program. What this does is establishes expectations for what is going to be produced and at what point you're going to be involved in this. For example, this year, you can expect later this year, according to this policy, to see a preliminary 2012 street maintenance plan from the Public Works Department later on this year, sometime before August. This is the culmination of over 3 years of street work, and really what this does is it takes the inventory that we had done in 2008 and it applies it to a specific structure that the Public Works Department can implement and maintain and sustain over time. So I hope you've all had a chance to read it. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those at this time.
Okay, questions from the committee for Justin? Okay, other council members?
Is there a reason that we didn't include, since we're doing some of the arterial work, we didn't include Martway?
On which item are you talking about?
On the,
No, we haven't gotten to that
Yeah,
part
we haven't
yet.
got,
okay, what
Yeah, if
wasn't
you're
on any
talking,
of
if you're
them?
talking specifically about either this year's mill and overlay or this year's slurry seal, those are the next
Those
two
are the
items.
next
Okay, yeah, so,
This is just the framework that establishes how that process is going to work over time. Yeah.
Are we, as a council, going to receive a report every year based on, kind of the overall condition of the streets and everything? Or,
Yeah, that's the intention.
and what time of year do we anticipate receiving?
If you look, if you flip a couple of more pages, there's a timeline. It's near the back. It's under, yeah,
There
right
we
there
are.
in the middle.
Okay.
And you can see there, sometime between April and August, you'll see a preliminary street maintenance plan from the Public Works Department. And then that'll be, we'll do our street inspections and our program evaluation as a department, as a staff between September and December. And then we'll go out for bid for the things that are appropriate early on the next year to get those things done.
thank you, Justin. Any other comments or questions for Justin? Okay, do I hear a recommendation, take this to council?
I so recommend.
Yep.
Connie? Consent agenda? Consent? Consent, Will?
This, so far, yeah.
Okay, okay, consent. The
That's not-
committee said consent. Okay, consent agenda. Okay. Item number 4, 2011 slurry seal program bids. Mr. Justin.
Okay, what you have before you is a contract with Vance Brothers for a little over $169,000. What this will do is it brings streets that are rated currently in the mid-60s to low 70s, and it'll bring them back to a PCI rating of 93. The contract before you and the maps that you see, that represents 13 lane miles of road, and just for your information, the city currently has 110 lane miles of road that we're responsible for maintaining. This year's slurry seal contract touches 13 lane miles of that road. And I'd be happy to field questions on this contract.
Comments, questions from the committee?
What slurry seal and micro seal, that's all well and good in protecting the pavement itself, but it's having, doing my morning walks, it seems as if maybe perhaps our gutters are in a little bit more disrepair
Right.
in some places than others.
Right.
Do we have a gutter program, or does any of this
Sure.
contain?
No, I'd be happy to answer that. Happy to answer that. As a part, as going back to the actual street maintenance policy, what that policy reads is that as part of our annual evaluation, staff will look at the streets that are scheduled for mill and overlay in a given year, and given the extent of that and the circumstances, we'll either present a plan to do those operations internally and patch the curbs. Prairie Village does a very similar thing. Roland Park does a very similar thing. Marion's done that, where they go out and patch sections of curb that need repair in preparation for the actual mill and overlay operation. That's what the council policy reads. As for a comprehensive curb program that would touch any street outside of the mill and overlay program in any given year, that is not a component of this at this time, no.
To clarify on that, Justin, if I read the policy correctly based on what you just described, after the first 8-year cycle, the current approach, if funded, would get us through addressing the gutters
Correct.
that Will talks
Correct.
about. So
That's correct.
we would do it as we mill and overlay, but after 8 years,
Correct.
theoretically fully funded, all the gutters would be cleaned up as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
Justin, what's the difference between the upright gutters and the lazy back curbs?
One's more laid back.
I knew that was going to come from you.
John, do you mind jumping in there? He's probably a bit more technical expert on that.
The high back curb is the curb that you see with the gutter, and at the back of the gutter, there's about a 6-inch tall piece that comes straight up off the gutter. Lazy back runs back and then slopes up gradually and then tapers off back into the grade behind it.
But what's the advantage or disadvantage for one or the other?
There really is no advantage or disadvantage. A lot of times you see lazy back curb on, more on residential streets. You'll see high back curb on your Johnson Drives, your Lamars, your Martways, the more collector and arterial streets.
So there's no cost savings or anything like that one way or the other?
They both pretty much run about the same. They use about the same amount of concrete.
Okay.
One lays back, one sits straight. I never would have thought to ask that question. That's right, that's right. Other questions?
Is there going to be a way that we can see an overlay of every street in the city and what the next years will look like in terms of where we're going to slurry seal, where we're going to micro seal?
The next years, as in multiple years at a time, the way the policy reads, well, I guess that's going back to the last item, but the way the policy reads, that's not a component of this. Staff will have a working list for how that'll go, but given new input from PCI inspections or from construction projects, those PCI things will change, and so the construction schedule will be modified year to year to account for some of those variables. So,
But in looking just budgetarily, we have to plan out more than 6 months. I mean,
right, what this establishes, not this contract specifically, but the policy establishes 8-year cycles for doing all of this. I can give you preliminary cost projections for the next 8 years for what that's going to look like. And part of the policy is that we will balance those budgets and smooth it over time, given input from the data so that it's a sustainable program. One of the goals at the end of it actually is that the cost, the overall street maintenance cost, that being slurry seal and mill and overlay, won't fluctuate up or down more or less 18% in any given year, so that we can budget out over time and do that sustainably.
Does that answer your question, David?
yeah, it still doesn't help me address, just for my constituents to look out and say, when are we getting to your area?
One of the problems we have though is I think I just heard Justin say is things for 8 years out is too long of a planning horizon. Too much can change, and so we could give them a map that shows them 8 years, but it's kind of meaningless because by
Right.
year 2 or 3
If you
it could
alter that
change.
then at all, then you're
Yeah, I
you're
guess that's
changing
why I'm
expectations.
looking out a year and a half, maybe just seeing what we're going to do in terms of what's going to be done, whether it's going to be completely
before-
overlaid or we're just doing the...
By
So-
August, the Public Works Department will present a 2012 street maintenance plan that will show you the preliminary schedule for what's to be done in 2012.
So that'll be about a year and a half. Okay.
How are all these residents going to be notified of what's going to go on and what's the process going to be?
John, you probably know a little bit more what the regulations are for doing that.
Typically on a mill and overlay, you give them, it's 48 hours notice that their street's gonna be milled and overlaid, depending on the street, the length, things of that nature. You know, they're typically out 8 hours from start to finish. By the time you mill the asphalt off, pave the street, let it cool, and everybody's back in. It
Right.
typically takes about 8 hours.
And that's the responsibility that the contractor will have. We have every intention of notifying residents that the schedule is coming before that.
Okay. And they're explained, you know, it's carefully explained what's going to happen in the process, and all this isn't certified? Or how is this delivered?
Door to door.
Door to door?
That's
Okay.
Boarding.
Other questions for Justin? Okay, do I have a recommendation? Take this to council, a contract with Vance Brothers for the completion of slurry seal and micro seal applications to the city streets as itemized in an amount not to exceed $169,687.
I so recommend.
Connie?
Well,
Okay, not on the consent. Too many. Okay. Next item, Mr. Justin, this would be the 2011 mill and overlay program bids.
This is where I'm getting the really important gutters.
Okay, let's let him give his little spiel, and then you
Yeah.
can ask him questions.
Okay, the contract before you is with American Marking and Paving LLC. It's for a contract just over $144,000. It's for construction on streets that are too damaged. They're no longer eligible, and applying a seal coat would not benefit it in any way. What a mill and overlay will do is bring the condition of that pavement back to a PCI of 100, and the map, as you see it before you, touches 3 lane miles of road in the city of Mission. And with that, I would take questions.
Okay, now, well,
Okay, so none of this includes any kind of gutter work then?
The price for the contract before you does not include gutter. What I can tell you is that our public works crews, and John has personally gone out and marked off every section of curb that needs replacement, and it's the intention to perform that curb replacement where necessary before the mill and overlay crews come through to mill and overlay.
Because I know right there in front of Script Pro there on Reed's,
Right,
the gutters are just horrible
right.
along in there, and I'd hate to mill it and overlay it and have the curbs still, I mean, it's
We
like
marked those
going to
off,
prom in
John.
tennis shoes.
John, how many linear feet are we at about
We're between about 1,700 and 2,000 feet.
of curb that'll be replaced before this?
And that includes all of the mill and overlay streets.
Okay.
other questions from the committee? Okay, John?
Are you aware of what Scrippro's been doing on their curb work?
I am.
Okay,
I'm not.
okay.
Well, they actually haven't been doing anything curb-wise, it's all been,
They've been putting more
Just-
inlets and outlets in their parking places.
John, would you
Yes.
like to tell us what they're doing?
Yes, they have.
If it's on private property,
It's on private property? You mean the street, and we don't have an easement there, and they can do that?
a stormwater issue.
everything that I've seen that they've done are drive approaches.
You didn't answer my question. I said, don't we have an easement there from the street over, from the center of the street? Don't we go over so far and have an easement, which entails, like in people's yards and everything on normal housing projects and everything like that, John?
On right-of-way, you mean?
Yes.
There is right-of-way,
Yes, sir, I thought.
and they've got a right-of-way permit.
they're not putting any sewers in.
They're putting in, right there, down the street from you, they put
Yeah.
off of the next street over and 58th Street.
They tore up what was bad concrete and
But they got
replaced it.
drive going in and out of there. At least they did have, unless they've changed
They've
it.
not added anything. They just replaced that which
They're
was bad.
replacing all the bad.
Okay,
That's all, I walked it this morning.
okay.
Okay, other questions for Mr. Justin?
I'm just glad to see that we're getting 61st taken care of, where those trucks, they did a pretty good number of tearing that street up.
61st Terrace or 61st Street?
Yeah.
61st.
Which one?
Terrace. Terrace.
Yep.
This might be the appropriate time to just insert that the council policy from several items ago does include a provision for, and puts the onus on the Public Works Department to do inspections for the streets that are immediately adjacent to major commercial and street construction projects following completion of those projects.
What's the policy number?
It's council policy 125, I believe.
My understanding that because of that inspection, 62nd Street has been added to the 2011 program.
62nd, okay. From where to where?
Woodson to Lamar.
Woodson to Lamar?
Correct.
Any
Yeah.
other questions?
For clarification, I think someone, 62nd Street, yes, from Woodson west to Lamar, so it's been moved into the 2011 Mill Overlay program.
Any other questions? Okay, do I have a recommendation? Take this to council, would be in the price of $144,483.
Yes, I recommend.
Okay, Mel, Will?
Whatever
Connie?
your name is.
Connie?
Yes, I
Okay, not
think
on the
this is a
consent.
great start.
Thank you, Justin, good job.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Very good.
Wonderful start.
Okay. Yeah, does anybody want to?
Here, I've got some extras.
Justin, is there a way to make these bigger? Is there a way to make, you can't make them bigger on this, can you?
On this, not really.
And you can't,
No,
it's
I
hard to see.
can't, I can't read it, I've done it. I tried it, I cannot read it.
Next.
Thanks for bringing us back to us.
I will you remember the council, ready to sit down, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Just cool.
I didn't see that.
Okay, item number 6. Item number 6, we have update on Rock Creek Trail Phase 2, asphalt from Woodson to Maple. Miss Christie.
Yeah, I just get a lot of questions in the community center, and I know you probably get some questions as well as to the temporary portion of the trail and how it ended up the way that it is and where we're at on that. And it goes way back to the design process of the Rock Creek Trail, and specifically way back 2008 when we were enclosing Rock Creek, and we thought that that portion of Rock Creek would actually be enclosed in boxes. And so that part of the trail was designed to be temporary, thinking that if it did get enclosed, then it would be moved on top of those boxes and become permanent. Now, of course, we know that that is not going to happen anytime in the foreseeable future. So what we're looking at now is we have some money left over from the original construction, the funds that were made available through transportation enhancement funds. Approximately $250,000 left there. So we've gone back and we've asked the contractor to submit bids for concrete or asphalt to go in and make that temporary portion of the trail permanent. We've got those bids back. We need to submit those over to KDOT, let them evaluate and determine whether they will allow that to be included as part of the original construction for the trail. If so, then we can get that done. To finish that trail, that portion of the trail in concrete would cost about $90,000. And of that, the city of Mission would be responsible for about between $13,000 and $14,000 after we get all of our reimbursements from KDOT and from Johnson County. And if, again, this all depends on whether KDOT does allow us to include that as part of that original construction. So we should know, response back from there in a couple, 2-3 weeks at the very most, and if so, should be able to mobilize and get that finished. If not, then, if KDOT does not approve that as part of the original contract, then we'll have to explore other options and see if that's something that we can do at this time or not.
Very good. Questions for Christie from the committee?
Clarification, did you say concrete?
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Lawrence looks puzzled.
No, I was just surprised I expected to be asphalt. That's fine. No complaints.
Okay, thanks, Christie.
You're welcome.
Okay, item number 7, ICMA performance measurement update. Josh.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is just an informational item I've got for you. Each year, it's one of the department heads' favorite activities. We go through and report on ICMA performance measurement templates. And what that is ICMA sends out a packet full of questions, and it asks questions like, for your police department, what's your average response time? How many crimes have you solved in certain categories this year? The idea is that year over year, you can compare and decide whether or not your departments are performing effectively. The good news is that this is about the 4th year in a row we've reported. So next year we should be able to put together a report that kind of looks in more detail at how our departments have performed over the past several years. And the various questions that they ask are also very useful in terms of strategic planning. So when we go through our budget process this year, we'll be looking at some of these performance measures and trying to factor that into areas that we can target in terms of spending and setting benchmarks for how we're performing in future years. So that's all. If anybody has any questions or anything on that process, feel free to let me know.
Questions? Comments? Okay, thank you, Josh. Good meeting, guys. Any other comments, questions?
Can I ask just a question? On the street maintenance program collectively, when do we get into the striping? Is that done on a street-by-street basis as needed, or does that, striping seems to be a big problem because you can't tell if people need to turn or go. My street's been striped like 3 times in the last 7 years. It's a worn street.
There are provisions in its intention that we do this every year in mill and overlay and for slurry seal to stripe them exactly as they are striped at this time. So for mill and overlay, they'll just mill it off, and then the onus is on them to document how the traffic striping looks right now, and then once they've done the overlay, to put it back, obviously with new material and thermoplastic down as it is. With slurry seal, they actually have to remove the current striping, then put the seal down, and then reapply it.
Okay.
So.
Oh, great. Thank you.
While we're on that topic, at some point I would like to see us develop a policy on where to put crosswalks and where not to put crosswalks in this city. I don't feel like we have crosswalks everywhere they're needed, and we possibly may have some where they're not needed. So I understand the bid contracts, they put the striping back down where it exists, but it would be nice to ensure that the striping is exactly where it should be. I don't know how we go about doing that, but it'd be something to clean up.
Thanks, Justin.
And if you get some extra striping, you might want to do that little intersection on Shawnee Mission Parkway between Countryside and Mount Haven. Because nobody knows where to go there. Okay, other comments, questions? Thanks, guys.